All right, Marty Bent. How you doing, man?
Doing well, Mr. McCormick.
Danny sent me, it's telling me about an article you wrote, The White Pill,
Oh, the white pill. Yes.
which I missed.
We need more white pills.
Yeah, so it's very easy to be negative all the time.
Yeah, it is.
Talk about the negative shit. And Danny called me this morning. It's like, do you know what? All that shit we're going to talk about with Marty, forget it. Let's do the white pill.
We need more white pills in the world.
All right, tell the people listening what the white pill is.
Well, take a step back. I wrote that newsletter, I think it was last week, as a reminder to myself to not focus on the negatives. In, I guess it's 4chan culture. I don't know what corner of the internet the black pill, white pill emanated from, but it's a play on the red pill from the Matrix. The red pill opens your eyes to how the system actually works. And then obviously we have the orange pill. Take the orange pill, Bitcoin fixes the world, fix the money, fix the world. Then you have black pill, white pill. Black pill represents nihilism, however you want to pronounce it. No matter what's going on, everything's going to shit. And
Everything's fucked.
yeah. And the white pill is like, hey, everything may be fucked, but we have our way out of this. And so that's why I wrote that newsletter. Is like, things are pretty messed up in the world right now, whether it's here in the US, globally, with everything going on.
Where we are in the UK.
Yeah, whether it's financial, political, social, everything seems chaotic. And people are very focused on the negative, and I do think that has a negative reinforcement in terms of it creates this flywheel of everybody's focused on the negatives, which leads them to be more depressed about their current state of life, and most importantly, depressed about where we can go in the future. Whereas I do think it is important to highlight that while things may be a bit crazy and chaotic right now, we do have the tools to build ourselves out of this chaos and create a better future. Bitcoin obviously being one of them.
It reminds me, because you always tweet, we're winning, we're going to win.
We're going to win.
We're going to fucking win.
We're going to win. And people take that as a sign of complacency, where it's a term, a phrase that assumes that we have a path to victory and it's inevitable. And that's not really what I'm trying to do when I say we're going to win. I think to believe that you're going to win, you have to believe that you can win. And again, going back to like black pill, white pill, I think people who are black pilled and are very negative about the state of the world and where it's going have conceded that they don't think there's a way out, and there's no way that we can win against these overbearing forces, whether they're political, financial, social, whatever it may be. And again, white pill, we're going to win, is a phrase that I've been putting out there to basically let people know that we can win. We do have the tools at our hands to build our way out of this, if you will.
All right, I love it. I'm going to steal it. I'll credit you.
It's meme.
It's
meant to be stolen.
Yeah, I'm on the team white pill. Is there what's the psychology behind? Do you even know the psychology behind the black pill? Like, is it like a feedback loop, a doom loop?
I don't know the science behind it or the psychology behind it, but I do think, I think it's pretty well known that you are a creature, or some regards, to some extent, you're a creature of your environment. If your environment's consistently negative and telling you that you can't win or there's no way out of this, that we're doomed for a dystopian future where we're all government tax cattle, which I've been happy to see that you have come around to taxation, maybe.
Dude, I tell you what, the last year has been a revelation for me. And I know it should be like, oh, you've done the podcast for 6 years. Everyone's been telling you this. But the culture of the UK and Europe is really different. We are, we're not born in freedom like the US. We weren't established from a war where we fought for our freedom in the way you were. It's not a recent thing. We don't have a constitution. We don't have free speech. The government does so much for us. So you could just grow up kind of like used to this. And actually, the way of life is still pretty good. My entire childhood was amazing. And most of the problems we have, a lot of general problems the same as the US, but I always felt like democracy worked, right? And now I've been embedded in the local business community and working with the council and the mayor and trying to grow my football team and build businesses in Bedford, I've just been exposed to so much shit. And it's like, I'm at that, like, I'm done, just fucking done. You know, I've had the issues dealing with our local mayor interfering with our football team, and we're clearly a net benefit to the town. I'm repeating myself because I said this on the pod already, but look, we've created a football team that's supported by teams around the world. By people around the world. We put on an event that sold out every hotel room in the town. We don't lose money. We invest in women's football, the only team. People flying from all around the world to Bedford to watch a team play. They'd never heard of the town before. We're clearly a net benefit. Yet the mayor's done everything to try and kill us off. And I know why. It's because of who his mates are. His friend owns the rival club. But he's a mayor. His job is net good for the town. And then in trying to run businesses, that's what's really stood out. So there's a lot of shops that are closed down in the town centre, and I'm about to open another one. I'm about to open a cafe. And one of the first things I found out is the business rates. So that's the tax you pay before you've done anything. So you get the corporation tax after you've been successful. Before that, you have the business rates. £16,000 on a cafe. I mean, you'd be lucky if the cafe did, say, 165 grand, which makes it 10%. So it might be 12 to 15% of your turnover before you've done your turnover. And I'm like, for what?
Yeah.
And then I just realized, like, all these different taxes, it's clear what happened. Like, the US kicked us out because we wanted a 2% T-tax. Then eventually you have your first tax, and then the next. And it's just, there's incremental growth on taxes in every part of your life. For what? What's got better?
Yeah. How's that money being spent? And that's only one angle of it, too, with the fiat system. We get taxed two ways now: direct taxation and via debasement. And that's another white pill. I think people are starting to wake up to this and recognizing they may not know the core of the problem being fiat money and the ability to print money ex nihilo and go spend it on things that are extremely wasteful. And then on top of that, fund departments that will lead to more taxation. But again, to solve a problem, you have to recognize there is a problem. And I think more and more people are beginning to realize that there's a big problem with the money, particularly.
Yeah, and I haven't always bought into this more conspiratorial view. This like, oh, they're doing this to trap you so you become complacent and loyal and you just do as you do. I think it's more organic. I know there are just some evil fucks out there, but I think it's more organic. I think governments are stupid. Let's put it a different way. When you've got multiple businesses and a house to run, right? And in both of those, if you lose money, you lose them. If you don't operate with a profit in your business, you'll lose it. You can maybe take a loan, but then you have to pay that off. And the same with your house. If you can't pay your mortgage, you lose your house, right? It's just general rules of that you have to play by, that you have to be productive and profitable, so you keep your house and keep your business. And I think what happens is clearly, governments are very bad at spending money. Elections come, they want votes, so they overspend and they go to the infinite money printer. If I had an infinite money printer, I'd live in a bigger house. Probably wouldn't have a business because I wouldn't need one. And so in doing that, then they keep having to tax more and they find other ways to tax you, and it just gets out of control. And then you get trapped and you get into this thing where like the hurdle to get out of it's really hard, because if you think how much profit you have to, like how much you have to earn to save to start a business, or if you've got a business, how much you need to earn, and then the hurdle rate of profit that you need to make to start the next business is really hard. But take away all your taxes, right? Mm-hmm. If I took away half my taxes, my personal, my companies, like corporation, all the different taxes I pay, I could launch double the businesses I'm doing, create double the jobs. But I can't, because there's all these fucking hurdles. I'm done with it, Marty. I'm so done with it.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting. It's getting worse here in the United States too. It's something I'm dealing with. I spun up an LLC earlier this year, and as of January 1st, 2024, the Corporate Transparency Act is officially in effect. And that means that anybody who starts an LLC and any member of that LLC who owns more than, or 25% or more of the business, I believe, is the threshold, needs to report information to FinCEN, which I think is a bit redundant. We're paying our taxes and the federal government is getting that information via the IRS to some extent, but it is an example of a barrier to entry created by the government that is really a bad incentive to enable small businesses to sprout up. And because that's essentially what's happening here is it's to comply with it. We've had to deal with a lawyer and accountants to make sure that we can get the information that costs money up front. And the way the Corporate Transparency Act is set up, it's retroactive as well. So if you've currently operate an LLC in the US, you have to report your information to FinCEN by the end of the year. You have a year. If you're a new LLC, you have 90 days. If you're an old one, you have a year to report to FinCEN. And there's thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, maybe even, of LLCs that have been spun up over the last decades, run by people running a small farm, a small pharmacy, whatever it may be. They're probably completely unaware of this. And if you don't report your information, you are, I believe, you can punishable by like a $10,000 fine, which could be debilitating to some of these small businesses.
Well, what's their justification they've said for it?
Money laundering. We need to give this information to FinCEN so that they can monitor the operations, particularly the financial operations of these companies, and quickly identify and stamp out money laundering.
How much money laundering really goes on there?
I don't know. Well, that you get into a deeper conversation. Like, is money laundering even a thing? Like, I mean, I think Elaine Au wrote a blog about this years ago. But like, we need to stop focusing on defining particular services and whether they facilitate money laundering, and get down to the core of like, is money laundering actually a crime? Money moves and crimes are committed, but is the movement of that money actually the crime that's committed at the end of the day?
I think they would say is if you are moving criminals' money to wash it for them, that would be a crime because you're helping facilitate the criminal from running the business. That's what my assumption is they think.
Yeah. But again, this glass of water, like if I were to go rob a bank and this glass of water properly hydrated to me, are you going to be charged with abetting a criminal because you helped hydrate me here because I filled my water up? And again, it gets back into like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like, money is a tool that is used by everybody, including criminals. And I'm not advocating for criminal activity in any way, shape, or form. I think law enforcement, they've used the Bank Secrecy Act and all the KYC, AML compliance and money laundering, because money laundering wasn't even defined as a crime until the 80s, I believe, mid-70s, early 80s. And it wasn't even used as a term. You can go look at the historical usage of the term money laundering. It didn't even appear in the English vernacular until 35 years ago, or actually 45, 50 years ago. And it's really created this hostile environment for people just trying to operate their businesses and go about their lives. And they have all this regulatory compliance thrust on them that costs money. And scares the crap out of them, where I think the solution would be to abolish the Bank Secrecy Act, recognize that money is a tool. Yes, criminals use tools, water, cars, money, and put it on the law enforcement. Like, if you actually want to stop criminal activity, like, focus on the criminal activity.
Do police work.
Do police work, yeah. Don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and create this completely dystopian financial system where everything's bagged and tagged, and it really makes it hard for individuals who are operating in good faith and not engaged in criminal activity, which is most people, making their lives extremely hard.
Yeah, and you've also got the flip side is the additional bureaucracy and cost. I mean, how many people do they employ? What did we hear the other day, Kurt? Is it 15% of your taxes paying for the IRS staff or something ridiculous? Some stupid thing we heard. Yeah,
you're funding the people who are coming to take your money. And it's beyond, I forget what I was going to say, but beyond that, the data collection, right? KYC, AML data collection. I think it's become abundantly clear that is putting more people in harm's way, like the net benefit of stopping the criminals who are engaged in quote unquote money laundering compared to the amount of individuals that get put in harm's way due to identity fraud is far, the negatives far outweigh the positives there. I think the stat that was thrown around a few years ago was KYC, AML compliance regulations, and people complying with those regulations stopped something like 0.1% of global money laundering over the course of a decade. And so like the risk-adjusted benefit that you're getting is extremely poor in terms of the investment, the data collection, the people put in harm's way via that data collection doesn't justify what's going on. It's only getting worse and worse as time goes on. It's like doubling and tripling down on something that objectively does not work.
It's even worse in the UK. So if you are a director of a company, those records are public, and attached to those records is your home address.
Yeah.
You can't hide your home address. So I have to invest in additional security at my house because of that.
Yeah. And I mean, especially in the context of
Being a Bitcoiner.
Bitcoin, like if all these exchanges are holding your name, address, social security number, and they get hacked, which has happened many times in the past and will continue to happen. Let's not pretend like it won't. Like these people are going to have very intimate details about your personal life, particularly where you live. And the $5 wrench attack risk goes up significantly.
Yeah. It's a shame we don't also with this, what's it called, this Transparency Act?
Corporate Transparency Act.
We don't get a Congress, how they made their Money Transparency Act.
No, you don't. I think they tried to, Ro Khanna, I believe, put forward a bill that would stop congressmen and senators from being able to trade stocks, but I don't think that...
Turkey's voting for Christmas.
Yeah, I don't think that has made it past yet. But yeah, it's completely illogical, hypocritical two-tier justice system. But I think people are waking up. White pill, I think people are beginning to wake up to this because it is so obnoxiously in your face these days that people are beginning to throw their hands up and be like, wait a second, what's going on here?
Well, there's the distrust of government. There's massive distrust of media now. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel like traditional media is really dying hard. I was with a guy the other day. He's a documentary maker, and he used to make documentary for terrestrial TV, the traditional. I think you call it cable, like the traditional channels. He said there's no work anymore. There's no money there.
No.
There's no money in it at all. All the news organizations, they keep consolidating. I met with one guy who works for one of the major news, I won't dox his organization, but he said they've now had to merge with the online, and the focus, everything's online first, and the starting point is the headline, which says to me you're dead.
Yeah.
You got to get the right headline to get the right eyeballs to sell your ads. You're dead. Because that's exactly what happened with who was that? BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed, yes.
Yeah, they killed it to begin with. And I know what's going to happen next. All these news departments, they're going to, cut their staff, their reporters, and they can start producing news with AI. You'll have one person reviewing a bunch of articles, rather than a journalist writing an article. And it's just going to be a bunch of AI shit. And I like AI. I've been using it a lot, but I know the news is going to go to shit.
Yeah, I mean, we full transparency. We've been using it at TFTC to do exactly what you just described, which is try to scale our online presence, particularly the website, to deliver more news to people. But the way we're leveraging AI, I think is kind of unique where, and who knows how this will play out in the long run, but the use case that I've honed in on is we want it to be a online media publication that curates other people's content. Like, hey, instead of CNN going and get their headlines, like here's a bunch of the content that we watch and listen to, particularly that we think you should get value out of. And so we've been taking audio and video content predominantly, running it through an AI transcription service, and then using a combination of ChatGPT, Claude, and now some open source LLMs.
What's Claude?
Anthropic's ChatGPT competitor. And pointing it at the transcript and saying, hey, produce an article based off this transcript. Don't go on the internet and try to add anything to it. Just basically summarize this transcript and put it in article form. And so that has allowed us, we've done it with What Bitcoin Did episodes.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's been really cool.
Yeah, like take your audio content that doesn't have a written piece of content behind it, put it through the transcription, produce an article, and curate and elevate stuff on the website. Say, hey, here's an article form of this podcast, and then a link to the podcast at the bottom, like if you want to listen to this whole thing.
But that's curation, and that's cool. It's not a news organization, which I know what they're going to do. They're going to be releasing articles, and they'll have a journalist name under it, and that's really the person who's generated the article from ChatGPT or something. I mean, I'm just assuming what I would be doing if I was, I think the LA Times are one of the ones who's struggling. They'll be thinking, right, there's such and such happening, like ask ChatGPT to write an article, do a little bit of editing, and bosh, put it out there and claim it's their work. And I think it would mean we're just going to get a bunch of like homogenous news bullshit. Yeah. Maybe just in the in the voice of whatever their media organization stands for, but it'll just be shite. I think we're going to have less and less real journalism. But then so fucking what? All these organizations are dying, and TFTC, WBD, Whitney Webb's, Joe Rogan's, everyone else is growing. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think the worries of AI generated news articles are warranted. You should be worried about that, but I think it neglects what you just described, which is the emergence of this new form of media, which is actually probably better for everybody at the end of the day, because you get to really, I don't want to say eliminate, but I think it would reduce the jailman and amnesia effect, which is you go as a Bitcoiner and read an article about Bitcoin in the Wall Street Journal, and you know that obviously the journalist who wrote that article has no idea what he's talking about. And then you begin to think like, oh, if he doesn't have any idea, if the Wall Street journalist doesn't have any idea what he's talking about when it comes to Bitcoin, like how can I trust that he or she understands what they're talking about in any other capacity? And I think this long form interview format that has really taken over since Joe Rogan really pushed it to the fore over a decade ago now at this point is reducing that, because instead of you or me individually reporting on these different sectors of the economy or world news, you bring on an expert. I'm not trying to say I'm an expert in any of the things we're talking about right now, but
he is. Don't listen to him.
You get a long form conversation where you can dive deep, and it's a curated experience.
In some ways, it's a more decentralized form of news as well. Mm-hmm. You know, these big news organizations have been a centralizing force, and especially Rupert Murdoch's group. I always think of what we get with Sky and the Times and the Sun, and you always know pre-election he's having dinner with one of the parties. He says, "I'm going to support you," which means all their content is going to support that party. So it's all fucking bullshit anyway. And I know you're going to get that anyway. I mean, Tim Pool's going to be supporting Trump, but at least that's an individual, and he's choosing it, and you know it's his choice, and you know why, rather than everyone in an organization being forced to do it when they've got individual thoughts and feelings. I kind of feel like this probably fits right within your white pill thing, the fact that this is happening. Like anyone can spin up a mic or get a phone and they can start a podcast the next day.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. I think another good trend, which I've certainly employed at TFTC, is just trying to do away with the pretense that what you're doing as an individual journalist or podcast or whatever you want to call what we're doing. I'm like, let's eliminate any pretense of impartiality. I'm like, I'm a Bitcoiner. I think
you should buy the shit out of
it.
The
fiat system is ruinous. I think there's a climate hysteria. Like I wear my bias on my sleeve and basically create an environment where it's like, hey, this is my bias. Here's the people I'm talking to. If you understand that, as soon as you're listening to the content, or if that becomes apparent as you listen, like I think that's the trade-off I'm making personally, which is like, I'm not even going to pretend to be impartial. Like I have views. I want to get those views out to the world. They may be wrong, but let's get them out to the world and have a conversation, a debate about it, and test ideas out in the battlefield.
Well, that's the great thing, even in the Bitcoin podcast space. They know they get that with you. They know with me, they're getting somebody who's not as tech literate as you, probably more center ground on politics than you, got that European bent. They know like my biases. They know with Stefan is ultra libertarian. So you you definitely know each person and personality and what they stand for, and you can either just stay with what you like or go and be challenged elsewhere, which is, I think, is a good thing. Well, it's definitely a good thing. It's like with Joe Rogan, I know his bias, I know Tim Pool's bias, and so you get to know their biases, and at least you're armed with that as it's a bias which is what their opinion is, rather than a commercial decision by the chairman, chief exec of a company who's decided, right, we're going to support that political party because it's good for our bank balance.
Yeah.
Like I don't believe any of your personal opinions are about your bank balance, and I certainly know mine aren't. And that's a more honest, transparent way to deliver people content.
Yeah, and just create a market of competing biases, and individuals can go into that free market and consume each different bias and make their own decision individually. Maybe it's a combination of those biases, whatever it may be.
We sit down and we clash them and figure them out. It was funny. I was actually chatting to Stefan the other day because I tweeted out like the golden age of Bitcoin podcasting is over, because it used to just be the three of us, right? It's like there's so many now, and it's been really good to see so many people come out and add different perspectives, and I think we'll get a bunch more this next cycle. And I think, again, back to your white pill, this is really healthy. There's so many people out there creating news, creating content that competes, and the best thing is it sucks people more and more away from that mainstream bullshit. And I just think there's like it's a bit like Bitcoin itself. It's like you've got your early adopters, your late arrivals, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're going to see exactly the same with media. I think ultimately we'll see it with politics. I think politics has got this, it's like the last thing to die. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how it will die or how it will change, but politicians can't lie anymore.
No, they get caught up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, I mean, that's a big saying is, we know they're lying. They know that we know they're lying, and they lie anyway. They're lying. They know that we know that they're lying, and they lie anyway.
We know that they know that we know that they know they're lying.
Yeah.
Fuckers.
And I think that's like one of the last hurdles is like that people are trying to figure out, and why things are so chaotic right now is that has become more apparent than ever, and people are more pissed off than they have been in quite some time about that. Again, two-tiered justice system that you're seeing this manifest in many different ways, whether it's wars, crypto wars from Elizabeth Warren, and then people trying to fund politicians like Donald Trump to come protect Bitcoin.
You're skeptical on that?
I'm indifferent. It's like I go back and forth. I mean, it certainly would be nice to have a president who is supportive of Bitcoin and recognizes that as Americans, we should be really leading in and dominating, which we have up until this point. We should continue that domination. But again, you can't trust U.S. politicians as far as you can throw them these days. I mean, given the two choices, if I were to make a decision, it seems like, at least the way he's posturing in recent weeks, Donald Trump would be a better executive for our industry. But who knows what happens post-election? A lot of things are said leading up to elections to get elected, and then the follow-through is...
I mean, look, firstly, let's hope he follows through on Ross.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw on Tim Pool, he even said about Assange. Mm-hmm. I think that's fucking great. Hopefully Snowden.
Yeah, get Snowden in the mix.
Yeah, get them all in the mix. I think the politician thing's really interesting because the media has died. It was dying for a couple of reasons. One, the economics has changed, but you can still survive even under the tough economics if you build a good business. There are media companies that have survived, but I think most of all, it's like trust and honesty, and people trust Joe Rogan. Like Joe Rogan says some things you might think, oh, that's stupid, but I trust it's your honest opinion. And even Tucker now, for I think I found Tucker difficult sometimes, but I think he's gone through this transition where where he's actually coming out the other end, where he's like, you fully believe it's him, rather than just thinking he still had the kind of like the dregs of being part of the system. Did you listen to his interview with Dave Smith?
I did not.
It's really good.
Yeah,
I really liked it actually. He said something in it. He said there's no more battle between left and right. It's between liars and truth tellers, which I thought was a really, really cool thing to say. And I think the exact same battle is going to happen with politicians. Is that they're increasingly going to get exposed for being terrible and shit and liars, and I think you're going to get replaced by better politicians. Potentially, I mean, it's like that's my hope, but I think that's a potential.
Yeah. The problem that we have here in the U.S. is that the system of governance at the federal level has been taken over by bureaucracy. And so I think we actually learned this lesson with Trump during his first term, which is you came in to kick out the swamp and got into power and quickly realized that, hey, buddy, there's a bureaucratic process here with many different agencies that actually run things behind the scene. And yes, you may want to drain the swamp, but the bureaucratic system that's been erected over the course of the last century is simply not going to let that happen. Like, there's too much gridlock and there's too many things that need to happen to actually affect any meaningful change. And I don't think that bureaucracy has changed at all. And so just to add to my previous comments, like I wouldn't be surprised if Trump is genuine in his intent to support Bitcoin and the industry at large. And I think we should, if we're making a risk-adjusted bet, it probably makes the most sense to back the politician that is positioning that way and seems earnest in that positioning. However, I think many people discount the power of the bureaucratic system that's been erected. And the intelligence agencies, Department of Justice, Treasury, they really run things at the end of the day. I mean, you had Ron Paul come out at the Libertarian Convention, basically say, like, I believe that JFK was assassinated by the CIA and the FBI, like Martin Luther King, all these other things. So you had, here in the U.S., it's referred to as the deep state. And that's something I truly believe, is that the deep state really runs things. And the 4-year red team versus blue team vote is just a facade in front of that to make people feel like they're actually affecting change.
What is the kind of theory on what the deep state really is and how it operates? Is it just a group of heads of 3-letter agencies, a secret group of unelected? Like, what the fuck is it? Because like I hear it and I'm then intrigued to say, well, how does it operate? Or is it more organic? Is it just the deep state is an organic structure that it's not really like a group of weirdos around a table in a secret room. It's like just an organic thing that controls things.
I think that intelligence agencies are at the core of it. And yeah, it's essentially, again, unelected bureaucracy that has a lot of power and black budgets in terms of how much money they can get and spend. And they really make the decisions at the end of the day in terms of what we're going to do from a domestic and foreign policy. And that's the funny thing. It's like the history of the deep state in the U.S. is a lot of people will be saying at the time, like, it seems like the CIA or the FBI is meddling here. And then they'll deny that. And then a decade later, they'll come out with like a release documents, or somebody will do a Freedom of Information Act request. And they'll be like, no, yeah, we were actually doing that. So, I mean,
where do their mandates come from though?
That's a great question.
Like, what kind of president just go like, this is fucked, I'm ending this? That's
what Trump said he was going to do. And it looks like they were like, it's not going to happen. And Ron Paul, actually, he named Alan Dulles. I forget if it was the FBI or the CIA, but when he was the head, it's sort of, that's where it emanated from. And I don't know if we want to get too far down the rabbit hole, but
send me there, man. You'll have gone down there. I wouldn't have.
One of the books that Whitney has recommended that I and everybody else read is The Devil's Chessboard. And I think it revolves around Alan Dulles. And if you look into the inception of the CIA and the FBI, particularly, there's a combination of like literal Nazis and Satanists that were part of the early days of these organizations and sort of set the tone for what they were going to do. And it's completely insane. I mean, the FBI here in the United States too. And this is not to say that everybody involved with the CIA or the FBI is a bad person. I've actually heard from people who have worked with the FBI or CIA that like most of the people who are lower on the lower rungs of the management within these intelligence agencies are actually good people, want to do good work, and actually want to stop crime and prevent harm on American citizens. But at the top, it's completely sadistic and insane people. They've sort of just been running things in the background. The FBI, again, like has been caught numerous times over the last decade alone, just entrapping American citizens, like finding mentally disabled individuals and saying, "Hey, do you want to blow up this house? And we'll teach you how to do it." And then they
But why?
arrest the
What I
guy.
don't understand is why.
To create, to justify like an expansive
Control mechanism?
control mechanisms apart, but yeah, they want to expand the not the administrative state, but like the police state. That's the
Right.
word I'm looking for, the police state. And so they do all these entrapment endeavors to make it seem like they have domestic terrorists, and the FBI and the CIA and the Department of Justice need more powers, which inevitably lead with you having less privacy and less control over your life until you get to the end state of a police state.
I always wonder why, though. What's driving this? Like, do these people honestly think this is needed as a good thing? Are they fundamentally evil? Are they stupid? Like, is it like Rogan said, they're just people? They're out. I just don't understand why. It just fucking blows my mind.
I don't know the exact reason, but I have theories that the positions of power that allow people to do this fine-tuned for sociopaths. Like your average American, your average individual doesn't want that much power. And so if you make the path to these positions of power as easy as possible because nobody else wants to take them, the sociopaths will typically step up and say, yeah, I'll do this.
But how do you break it? Can you break it?
Hopefully Bitcoin. Did you talk about why Bitcoin is more American than the dollar with Parker?
No, but I've always felt as a European coming to America, I've always felt that Bitcoin is just such an American idea.
Yeah.
It's not a European idea.
Well,
it's very counter-European. We are a centralized continent, and we're centralized countries within a centralized continent. We are much more collectivist. We are. Whereas the thing I've always liked about the US coming over is how individual you are. The individual freedoms. Ignoring all the commie weirdos. Like that's what I've really found. So I've not talked about it with Parker, but I feel it.
Everybody should go watch his presentation from BitBlock Boom this year. Not to shill my own wares, but Parker and I recorded an episode of TFTC about this about a month ago now at this point. But to answer your question of like, how do you end this? It all comes back to the money. Like these institutions are funded by either debt that's issued by the Treasury or money that's printed out of nowhere by the Fed. And Parker makes a really good case when he says Bitcoin is more American than the US dollar. He's being very particular with his words and really dives deep into how the US Republic was set up from a governance perspective. You essentially have three branches of government to create this inherent gridlock, which makes it extremely hard to change the laws to erode civil liberties on individual Americans, because it's going to be hard to break that gridlock. And what the US dollar, particularly the fiat monetary system, the US dollar reserve system, that was really started in 1913 but accelerated in 1971, it perturbs that balance of power between the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative branches, because now the executive and the legislator can use the power of money printing and debt issuance, and they can issue as much debt as they will because the Fed can print money and then monetize that debt, which they've done over the last 15 years without having to take into consideration the other rung of the governance structure here in the U.S., which is the Supreme Court. So they're able to fund a lot of these initiatives, a lot of the bureaucracy that we discussed earlier, via the way the monetary system and the U.S. Treasury system actually runs. And so they're able to, they found a loophole in a way to spin up all these agencies, fund them without having to go to the taxpayer directly and say, hey, we need you to pay for this.
Yeah, they've routed around the democracy.
Yeah.
So does it not surprise you that they haven't come after Bitcoin harder then? Do you think that's to come?
I don't know. I don't know. They're starting to come after it harder now in the last, like that's what I worry about, like last year with the lead up to the ETF approvals, Tether announcing that they've onboarded the Secret Service and the FBI. You can see maybe they're being very strategic in setting up the conditions for which they can create like a white label Bitcoin to make compliant rails where, yes, you can use Bitcoin, but you have to do it in this way. And then coming after developers building self-custodial tools, not long after that. But yeah, I also, to a certain extent, like I don't think many people within the government understand the gravity of Bitcoin, how powerful it is to take away those tools. I think they're starting to understand it more acutely now, but I think we had 15 years of runway where we were able to build out this robust network and get it into the hands of millions of individuals around the world. And it may be too late. And again, going back to Parker, Bitcoin is more American than the US dollar. Like, this is actually, if you are a politician that actually wants the country to succeed and the individuals within the country to succeed, you should embrace Bitcoin because it is more tightly aligned with the ideals that this country was founded on. And if I were them, like, I would want Bitcoin to succeed because they've backed themselves into a corner that they cannot get out of. And if you try to take away one of the only things that enables individuals who will be severely hindered by the mismanagement of the national debt and the monetary system, if you take away like one of the only things, which is Bitcoin, that can actually enable individuals to pull themselves up from their bootstraps and secure themselves against the mismanagement of the monetary and debt situation here in the United States, it's just going to be completely politically untenable. And if you were looking for the quote unquote soft landing, you would just open up the floodgates and let the free market of individuals and companies building on and around Bitcoin to do their thing.
It's crazy talk, Marty. I do wonder how many of these politicians actually genuinely care about the ideals of being American, the traditions of being American, what it was founded on. I know there's some, like Cynthia Lummis is brilliant. Mm-hmm. She always seems to have the right take. And I'm not going to say it's all Republicans, but there seems to be a bent more to Republicans who seem to care more. But I feel like the Republicans are the Americans and the Democrats are more European.
Yes, certainly. From a fiscal perspective, definitely. Yeah. But shout out to Ron Wyden, Democrat from Oregon, very focused on privacy of individuals and gets Bitcoin. And I know Senator Lummis has co-written a bill with Gillibrand in New York. So there's some. And again, I think if you truly care, like coming from the social democratic side of things, for the Democrats, like if you care about individuals and you want them to be able to live a life of relative wealth and security, like you would be all in on Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, all in on Bitcoin does pose a problem for the dollar. And that poses a lot of problems for a lot of people. But like, I'm cool with that, and I know you are, but it does pose a problem. I think I would have thought a more realistic midterm goal is a happy coexistence.
Dollar's fucked either way, though. Like, it's not, the dollar's not going to fail because Bitcoin succeeds. Like,
no, of course. But what I mean is, it's like a rush out the doors. We've got no idea of the chaos. Like, I think, for example, the 4-year halving and the gradual adoption of Bitcoin, I'm really happy with the adoption rate of Bitcoin. I think it's almost perfect. You don't want it too quick because the protocol wouldn't be able to support the number of users. The developers haven't had enough time to build the tools. And I think the adoption rate's great. I just think we'd like a nice transition.
Agreed. White pill.
There you go.
Maybe that's what's happening. And you look at it, if you were to be behind the scenes and trying to figure out, like, all right, how do we get this Bitcoin thing to succeed, but not induce that mad dash to the exits that you have hyper Bitcoinization and hyperinflation at the same time. One can make the argument, you just do what's been happening, which is like, all right, like we'll begin opening up the floodgates for people to get in via ETFs. We'll be okay with corporations holding it on their balance sheet. We'll actually change the accounting rules so it makes it easier for them to do it. And we begin to see at the K-13 files from all the hedge funds and institutions that have bought Bitcoin since the ETFs launched earlier this year. You have the pension fund in Wisconsin is on board. And I think this is only the beginning. And so to that point, like if you did want a soft landing, smooth transition, like you just slowly but surely be like, okay, you guys can get Bitcoin now, and then hopefully before they completely destroy the dollar, there's enough people onboarded, enough people with exposure that it's not.
It's like the Hayek sleight of hand as well.
Yes.
And that sleight of hand, because that's the thing, I don't care about the ETFs. I would never hold it. And like I did wrestle with this. I'm sure you did as well. Is it good? Is it bad? These centralized pools of capital, or Larry Fink trying to exert his influence. But I think just the most important part of it is you're going to have so many people who have a interest in Bitcoin, whether it's passive or active. I mean, there's a lot of people passively now who have a active interest in the success of Bitcoin, and that's only going to grow. Every one of these corporate treasuries, every one of these people got a part of their IRA. Everyone who's bought the ETF. You've got probably tens of millions of people now who have a active interest of Bitcoin being successful and succeeding and not being destroyed.
Yeah, and that's massive. And again, when it comes to like ETFs, would I get my Bitcoin exposure via ETFs? No, but not everybody is me, and there's nothing I can do about it. Right? I think Rodolfo has been very consistent about this over the years. It's an open system. Anybody can participate, and that includes institutions on Wall Street if they want to, and they will. And I've been pretty convinced that the ETF will act as a top of funnel. I think people will get exposure via the ETF. They'll see what it does for their portfolios. They'll get more interested. They'll do more research. They'll notice like, maybe I could actually hold this thing. Maybe I should hold this thing. And then some will take steps to do that. Others won't. But optionality is part of a free market, and ETFs simply provide optionality to people who just want passive exposure. Maybe now, maybe they'll want more direct exposure in the future, but time will tell. The big elephant in the room is, again, going back to what I said earlier, don't create this two-tiered system where the government comes in and says, no, the only way you can interact with Bitcoin is via regulated rails like the ETF or a full KYC AML exchange where you can't actually hold your Bitcoin. Yeah,
this two-tier thing is definitely a risk. I had Tony and Ben Carmen in the other day talking about Mutiny wallet. I fucking love that wallet, by the way.
It's great.
But actually realizing, it's this really weird thing. When you go and start a business, right, you want to think about growing your business. You want to think about your staff, your income you bring in, and your costs, and running a business. They're not just building a business. They're having to build a business with courage, because they actually don't know at some point is someone going to come after them. Like, no one's coming after a podcaster, I hope.
Please.
Maybe in the UK, what they did, because I said some words wrong. But generally speaking, they're not coming after a podcaster. And it is a very different scenario from the samurai guys in that, obviously support and back them and back privacy and back their tools, but they said something that they provoked. They kicked the dog, right? But these guys are just building a wallet. And I asked them about it. And, it takes a certain courage because they're building a wallet when they've seen like Phoenix exit the US because they're worried. They've seen IBEX exit the US because they're worried. And so you actually now you're trying to build a business and a tool that's good for people. It's good for humanity. And you have to do it with courage because you might face arrest at some point. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's insane, but that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Right? We're in this new open territory. And that's the frustrating thing for me personally, just looking at this, is because everything we have at our fingertips, again, white pill. We can build our way out of this. We do have to figure out a way to either convince or just build stuff in a way where it's impossible to stop, convince the politicians, or build unstoppable applications. But like if you just get down to first principles, what can we build here if we were in the hypothetical world where we didn't have to worry about being labeled criminals for building this? It's incredibly insane.
Yeah.
You're talking about a sci-fi financial system anchored to this extremely scarce digital good that can enable insane applications, like what we're seeing with the emergence of eCash mints, whether that's on the Fedimint protocol or Cashew, the development of the Lightning Network. You can build really cool, robust systems. And if you were able to do that without having to wake up every day worrying about whether or not you're going to get thrown in a cage for building this stuff, it gets me really excited to think about what can be built and how quickly it can be built, and then dismayed when it's like, this isn't happening because people are worried.
Yeah, and how much more capital would be available for investors if the government was showing a different kind of approach to Bitcoin? If because like that's another choice. Like if you're a VC, you're investing money, you got to look at something. Go, well, if I invest money in this, is going to get closed down in a year, 2 years. My investment dies at that point.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking to somebody who's a managing partner at a fund that was investing in Mutiny. And so, but I think, again, Ben, Tony, Paul, I think they're thinking very creatively about this too, in terms of how they can reduce the risks that they have and building in a very particular way to make sure that what they're putting forth is within line to the best of their knowledge, and giving people the tools they need, and like using the app, like the Fediment implementation that they put in.
Very cool. It's
very cool. And it's like honestly made the user experience around receiving Lightning payments within a mobile app much better for me. The time in which the payment confirms and the amount of times it doesn't confirm at all just because of routing on the Lightning network is way better. And then you get the added privacy bonuses of using eCash tokens within a mint, and just really cool.
I actually also think, how much quicker would they ship if they didn't have to worry about regulations? Like, how much time is Tony spending reading FinCEN judgments and regulations and thinking about, well, we have to build it this way because of that? What could they just, if they could just build and just forget about it and focus?
I think it'd be pretty insane. And that's, again, going back to, it is a sad state of affairs that we've gotten to this point in society where everybody's labeled assumed to be a criminal. The structure in the U.S. has flipped from innocent until proven guilty to guilty until proven innocent. And again,
still guilty anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think most people are criminals.
No, they aren't.
I think a very small percentage of us are. And the fact that we have to sit here and worry about this stuff to the point where it drives a lot of stress in people's lives, particularly people building in Bitcoin, is insane.
I mean, look, just think of all the people you know in Bitcoin now. Who do you actually think are genuine criminals and bad people? How many of these people that you've met, I've got to know, are some of the coolest people that you've met, and realizing they're all trying to, because it's like, I was talking about, at least Nifty Nayan earlier. I said, Nifty Nai? And I said, I think there's like 3 stages of being a Bitcoin. I think they're 4-year cycles, in that you have that first phase where you're kind of, you put some money in and, you know, you're rocking around up and down. Once you get through that first 4-year cycle, you got a bit of money so you can maybe like, invest in yourself or some businesses, or, have some holidays. And then the next cycle, you can almost become like a philanthropist. And almost every Bitcoiner I know who's been around for more than certainly 8 years, even 4 years, is a philanthropist. Like, everyone's donating towards projects and supporting other things. Everybody wants everyone else to win. Everyone is focused on protecting people's privacy. Everyone is kind of focused on human rights. Like, these are all really good people who are being held back from doing really good things for people.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
It's insane. It's almost like the world's under one big spell.
Yeah, it's flipped.
Yeah. And I don't know. Again, I have hope. I think people are beginning to realize you're seeing people reach their edge globally in terms of how central authorities, whether that be government or a central bank, are negatively affecting their lives. And again, we live in an age, and I truly think what was put forth in The Sovereign Individual is a really good thesis, is that we just so happen to be born in one of these 500-year inflection points where when you're inflecting towards the future, the time during that inflection point is extremely chaotic, and we're just trying to figure out exactly what this new normal is and how to operate within it. And that's true for individuals and authorities who have a lot of power. We've
got to live in a really interesting 50-year period where we basically got the internet, Bitcoin, and AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I may have told this on this podcast before, but I remember when we got caller ID for the first time when I was younger. I was 6 or 7. I was just able to see, like, oh my God, my aunt's calling us. And that was mind-blowing to me at the time, just being able to know who's calling you before you pick up the phone. And now to think how far we've gone in the last 25 years.
I remember my dad bought us our first computer to the house. It was an old BBC computer. We didn't have a computer in the house. It wasn't a thing. And he brought the computer home. He had a bunch of games. First game I played was a game called Manic Miner. It's an old platform, which I still sometimes play on. You can get the, what are they called with the versions of games?
Switch?
No, like online. They've created, an emulator. And they still go and play that very first game I ever played. But I remember that. I don't know, it's like 6, 7 years old. I remember when we got the internet for the first time, our first mobile. And it's really interesting because like with my kids, it's always been there. Like I had a funny story. I was watching a film with my son. I can't remember what the film I was watching. There was a ghetto blaster in the film. And someone was like, "What's that?"
What is that?
What is that, Dad? I was like, "It's a ghetto blaster." He's like, "What is that?" I was like, you know how sometimes like you're wandering around town and somebody's got their phone and they've got the music on loud. I was like, is that? People used to walk around with it, put their music on. They'd have it on their shoulder.
Oh, the boombox.
The boombox.
Boombox.
Ah, you got a boombox. Yeah, he'd never seen it before. Yeah. My kids have especially my daughter, but they've got no concept of no internet. They've got no concept of no mobile phones. They've no concept of how the world was completely different. It was one way, then we got mobile phones, and it was suddenly a different way. That you can contact anyone at any point, wherever they are in the world. We didn't have that. No. And now we've got AI.
Yeah.
AI wasn't a white pill thing for me to begin with. Like I was using it, but I was very concerned by it. Now I'm very optimistic with it. I use it so much. It's so efficient. I'm kind of like got this idea that's going around in my head that I'm wondering if AI can replace large elements of governance. In that, at the moment, say, Elizabeth Warren tweets some bullshit lie out, she just gets community noted. Mm-hmm. But if you've got the most intelligent brain in the world, can you objectively also prove it with data from the AI? So whenever governments do something or politicians do something, you just it's an instant proof check. Because the problem we've got at the moment is we have an issue of truth. Like, what is truth anymore? Mm-hmm. No one trusts anything. But can we get to the point where, we trust the AI because the AI has no bias, it's unemotional, and it takes facts and spits out answers. So I'm starting to feel like that about AI, but you probably then turn around and go, well, no, you can trick the AI.
Yeah, well, I think that's the big thing that we're going to have to figure out as it pertains to AI is like, what can you actually trust? That's why going back to the use case that I honed in on at TFTC, that was the first one where it was like, trust it. And I had to figure out how to hack ChatGPT not to hallucinate. And it was basically like pointing at a transcript saying, don't deviate from this transcript. Just give me information based on these 700 words, whatever it is. But I mean, bias can be injected into AI as well. I mean, we've already seen that with Gemini's AI from Google. ChatGPT certainly has its biases. Like if you put into ChatGPT 4 now, like what's healthy for you, Fruit Loops or a steak, it'll say Fruit Loops, which is objectively false. And so,
do we know why? Is it because it's looking at historical data rather than looking at ingredients?
Yeah, it probably has. I don't know exactly why, but I would imagine it has a bunch of what are deemed to be authoritative sources as it pertains to food health, one of which may be the FDA or the USDA. And the food pyramid here in the United States would have you believe that Fruit Loops are healthier than eating a steak, which is insane. But we were successfully psyoped into believing that for the better part of 40 years. And so that's, I think, when it comes to AI, it really comes down to the bias of the people that create the models and the data that's fed into the models. And then how you construct a model as well. I'm no way an expert in artificial intelligence, but I do think this idea of 1,000 minds over one monolithic model makes a lot of sense to me, where you combine a bunch of different models that are focused on one specific subject or vertical.
So it flattens the bias.
Yeah. Or, it gets the potential to flatten the bias. Because that's the one thing I worry about AI is like ChatGPT or Gemini becoming the dominant go-to models that people depend on. And, we already know that they're spitting out objectively false information. And
Yeah, I wonder if that bias, that false information, does it come from at the programming level, the project management level, or come from this historical poor data from the previous PSYOP data? Because it could be
combination of
both.
both. Yeah. And that's where, like, I think AI is, I use it every day. It is a good tool for the things that I'm using it for. But again, not becoming overly dependent on it. Like, that's the beauty of humans. Like, AI is just using linear algebra to predict outcomes based off of a shit ton of data that it's consumed over time. It doesn't have the ability to think like a human, no matter how much people would lead you to believe that it does. Like, it doesn't have the spontaneity that humans do in terms of thought and reacting to.
Do you not think eventually it could? Like, can you? We're what? It depends if you're religious or not. So I'm not religious. So I'm an organic AI. Like, but can you synthesize all the human experiences that come from our brains? I'm assuming you can synthesize anything.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, because, like, looking out behind you out the window, like, I'm watching the trees blow in the wind. That's very specific to the conditions outside at this current point in time. My brain's reacting to it in real time, not making any meaningful decisions based off of that, but, like, that affects me. And that's, like, data that's happening right now that the AI will never have access to. Maybe it gets real-time data and can react to that.
It gets eyes.
Yeah. But we'll see. I don't know. I am a religious person. And I don't know. I think this whole idea of recreating God and intelligence is very hubristic and something that I was warned about in the Bible and other religious texts that, I don't know. I find it hard to believe.
I do worry the AI is making me dumber because I might be overusing it sometimes. Like, it's got me a little bit lazy. Yeah, because I don't write, a lot of the time I don't write content now when I don't have to, because I can tell the AI what content I want and I approve it. So, like, I think of my buddy Tom, who moved to China. He learned fluent Chinese, and he's not lived there for a decade now. And, you know, his Mandarin skills are dropping. You know, he's just gradually forgetting bits, getting more rusty. And I do worry that my spelling and grammar and various things are going to get more rusty.
Yeah. That's why I try to write as much as possible still. Yeah, I think when it comes to AI, like the stuff that, like, financials, like, do you need a bookkeeper? Do you need an accountant? Do you need somebody to drive your car? Like, can AI get to the point where it, like, makes those things way easier? And it's a trade-off. Like, all right, it makes sense that it could do this, save a lot of time, save a lot of money. I don't know, maybe, like, everybody thinks it's destined to push us towards a world of where humans become a lesser life form than the artificial intelligence. Maybe that's the case. Again, I'm not an expert on AI. Maybe these monolithic models can synthesize enough data to create these extremely prescient and omniscient beings that will be considered superior to humans. But at the end of the day, we have the ability to unplug them if we really needed to.
Do we? They
so.
might escape.
Yeah. Well, this is the whole Matrix. You start doing that, then they bomb the skies, and or we bomb the skies to make sure they can't get solar power, and then they just turn humans into living batteries. But
have you seen that film, The Creator, that came out recently?
No.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That's that world of AI where it has got control. It's kind of interesting. It's worth a watch. It's not brilliant. Did you see it? No, it's worth a watch. So going back to your white pill thoughts and going back to Bitcoin, like, what are your most optimistic Bitcoin white pill thoughts? Or experiences? I
think I don't know. I'm just, again, I feel extremely fortunate that Bitcoin exists. I think a world in which Bitcoin didn't exist would be much more depressing. And it wouldn't, I would be much more dismayed at the future prospects of the world, particularly for my children.
Well, so Bitcoin is the white pill itself, and it's not an orange pill. It's a white pill.
It's a white pill, definitely. You can color it orange if you want to, but it's a white pill. But then I think, I don't know, there's everything going on in the industry at the technical level, at the capital level, at the mining layer. It's all, there's obviously different levels of concentration and risk associated with each, but I think the ball is being pushed forward, and we're really beginning to learn how to build efficiently on top of Bitcoin. Like eCash mints, a bit controversial right now, like how much trade-offs, but I'm extremely bullish on them. I think what they enable and how they can be leveraged is going to unlock a lot of really unique use cases. And I've always been partial towards Hal Finney's view of scaling Bitcoin.
The banking model.
Yeah, which he wrote about in December of 2010 on bitcointalk.org, which is basically you'll have these Bitcoin-backed banks that you can issue your own tokens on top of. He didn't tie it to eCash back then, but I think if Hal were alive today and he saw what's going on with the combination of Bitcoin, the Lightning Network, these Xiaomi mints, and even now Nostr, he'd be really excited about this development. Again, Nostr, I think in terms of like becoming more aware of how to interact with the protocol, I think that is becoming clearer, at least to me, especially if you juxtapose it to what the crypto bros are trying to do, the crypto industry is trying to do in terms of blockchaining all the things. I think we're beginning to really hone in on, no, you don't blockchain all the things, you just combine Bitcoin with things that make sense. And so podcasting 2.0, put a Lightning Network address in an RSS feed, and boom, you've combined open source content distribution with open source money, and you can monetize that content. Lightning, and now eCash with Nostr. It's like you have this open source communications protocol that is enabling a bunch of different applications, and now you have a native payments protocol in the form of Bitcoin via these different means embedded. You can apply this to telecommunications, VoIP and SIP protocols, which facilitate telecommunications. They have a 402 layer as well, which is a native payments layer that needs to be built in, and Bitcoin and Lightning really fill that use case. And then bring it back to AI too. Like if AI is going to be as big as many people, myself included, think it's going to be, like it's going to need to spend money on the internet, and it's not going to be using WorldCoin or its own cryptocurrency.
Bro, did you not see WorldCoin have just come out and said it's the most decentralized currency? Fuck off.
And they're going to leverage Bitcoin. Then on top of that, you look at the political side, like it seems like politicians here in the United States are like, oh crap, maybe we shouldn't try to ruin this thing for all of our citizens. They seem pretty passionate about it. You have Kenya and Marathon announcing their joint venture last week, which again just confirms and validates the longstanding thesis that nation states are going to be incentivized to welcome Bitcoin. You look at all the pensions beginning to put on their balance sheet. There's a lot of white pills out there.
Yes, the whole game theory for Bitcoin is kind of nuts.
Yeah.
In that everyone benefits from adopting Bitcoin. Everyone, every business, every country, every individual eventually benefits. And everyone who tries to stop it can't. So the economic incentives drive the reach, but the decentralized model prevents the people opposed to it trying to stop it. And so those two things just drive it forward. It fucking blows my mind.
Yeah, Bitstein said it best probably 7 or 8 years ago. Now at this point, the only winning move is to play. And I think more and more people are beginning to wake up to that fact.
Yeah.
And again, there's still going to be a lot of effort to ensure that individuals can access Bitcoin directly and control it themselves. I think we'll win those battles. I think at least here in the United States, we have very strong, or at least we should have very strong First and Fourth Amendment rights.
The fourth seems a bit weaker these days.
It does. But we're going to win. Yeah. We're going to win. White pills. And I think it's just in broad conversations with people in my network, family, friends, who have no idea what, cannot have the level of discussion that we just did about Bitcoin, the different technical aspects, but I think they're beginning to wake up to like, oh no, this makes sense. Like it's here. It's, again, 15 years in, it's like a brand that just over time, people are having now at this point hundreds of touches with it, where they just assume that it's a thing that's here to stay and will be here into perpetuity, and that that just, I think, it works in our favor as well.
Yeah, just going back to Mutiny again, I think the thing I really like about what they've done is like everything you brought up there, they've done it all. They've got Lightning built-in, they've got eCash built-in, they've got Nostr built-in.
Like that, so that's
so cool.
That use case alone, what they've done with leveraging the social graph of Nostr to port into the wallet to create an address book from which you can send Bitcoin directly to somebody. So you have that, again, let's talk about sci-fi applications, combining multiple protocols to create permissionless access to money and transfer of money is insane.
It's like Bitcoin Venmo.
They built Venmo in a few weeks, and it's not only has feature parity, but is better because the amount of UX around actually like sending funds to somebody within my Nostr contact list on Mutiny, it's like it's less buttons to click. Like, do you want this private or public? Like, do you like in Venmo? Do you want this private or public? Do you want like the ability to get a refund? Like, what's the message that you want to send? Like in Mutiny, it's like, Peter, he's got his LN address. We're connected on Nostr. I want to send him 500 sats. Send.
Bosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also like what they've done with the social signals for the mints as well. Like who's signaling for it. And I know that's not foolproof, and I might just follow it because you did, and you did because Will Cole did. And like we end up getting rugged because, but generally speaking, the direction that's going, again, it's a really strong feature. And that's why, like, I think I really want everyone to just use and support Mutiny, and I really want to back those guys because I think it's the coolest project in Bitcoin.
I do as well. It's and I'm fortunate. I mean, they work out of the commons. I get to see the Mutiny team. That was literally the last people I spoke with before I came here, and I'm just pumped for Paul, Tony, Ben. Like the fact that they're actually doing something they're passionate about, that they're doing it very well, and that I love the product as a Bitcoiner. It's happening. And
what it is, the other one I've got is a Zaprite. So what I like is I like Bitcoin products that I need rather than just want to use to support. So I needed Mutiny. It solved problems for me. Zaprite for me is better than QuickBooks and cheaper.
yeah,
I moved across. I ported it across the other day for my. Don't know if you saw, I launched a fund, like just a non-profit, but I ported it across for that because I needed a way for the donations to come in. And like Park had been saying, use it for a while, and I hadn't got around to it. And yeah, because I was just like, I've got to do these connections, but I didn't realize it was so easy, and did it, got it set up. But I actually, once I did that, I was like, hold on, this is better than QuickBooks. So I've moved the Rail Bedford across. I'm going to be closing my QuickBooks down. And my QuickBooks, I pay like £40 a month. That's £500 a year. And what's this, $240 a year? And it does more for me than QuickBooks because it's like, I was showing you the spreadsheet before, whereas like I have to take money in pounds, Bitcoin, and cash. Well, so at the moment when I invoice, I put our bank details at the bottom and then a Bitcoin address if they want to pay with that, which is fine. But with Zaprite, it does it all for me.
Yeah.
And it sends it straight to my Unchained vault. And we can use it for donations because we have this kind of like grassroots donations for football. It's just a better product. I'm going to be moving every business across from QuickBooks, and I'm going to be saving money and going to be more efficient. And it's so cool that we're getting more and more products like that.
Well, and it's another great example of a product that there are an analog or two in the traditional fintech world that highlights like, holy crap, like we can build things much faster in Bitcoin. So I've talked about this with Parker a lot. I don't think he agrees with this particular characterization. When I look at Zaprite, it reminds me like the Plaid of the traditional fintech world where...
Yeah, and I know why he doesn't like that comparison, but you're right.
I think he wants to go more for like a Stripe, which I think maybe even like bigger, which arguably it's that too. But I think Plaid for me, it's the one example that always sticks out to me because if you're going to sign up for an app and you need to connect your bank account, you get this Plaid interface where you connect your bank account, does all the communication, and boom, boom, boom. you can now interact with your bank account on that platform. Now, Zaprite, like it seems like we're getting that for the Bitcoin economy. Where It's like, all right, I need to receive Bitcoin payments for this particular business, for this use case. It's like, all right, Zaprite, I want to use my on-chain vault for this particular company or product. I want to use my Strike API for this particular company or product. I want to use an XPub that I control.
What?
An XPub.
Come on.
I forgot. I want to use an XPub connected to a hardware wallet I control.
Yeah.
I want to use the LND node that I'm running.
Yeah.
Boom, you just get the options. Like, all right, connect your Bitcoin bank account, and it's got the options, and more options by the day. Mutiny, whatever it may be. And so, like creating that service that's wallet agnostic and allows you to connect your Bitcoin financial rails to an invoicing and accounting service is incredible.
Well, it had so many of the tools I use. It has Unchained in there. It has Coin Corner in there. It has Mutiny in there. And for me, it just connects all these disparate parts of my business where I've got all these different kind of apps that I've been using, Coin Corner for ticketing, and when I was, like previously mentioned QuickBooks, but also using Unchained for my vaults. It just connects them all together and it just makes everything so much. And that's another thing. I'm like, if I'm in your white pill zone, I'm optimistic on people creating tools that replace legacy tools because they've natively built Bitcoin into it. So the reason Zaprite beats QuickBooks for me is it does everything I need in QuickBooks, which is invoicing and customer management, and invoice tracking, but it does the payments as well, and it natively understands Bitcoin. So that to me is just a better product because it understands a business which is part Bitcoin, part fiat, which all of my businesses are. But every business I've got, it's got a different percentage of what's in Bitcoin, what's in fiat, and I have to track it. But what I need now is I need a ticketing system that does that, because at the moment I've got a ticketing system which is at the moment is Bitcoin only. And if someone wants to buy a ticket, then I get an email through, and then I have to manually create the ticket and do a separate entry in a spreadsheet. My POS system for the football club, again, Zettle, it's a non-Bitcoin one. So if we sell in Bitcoin, we put it through an open node and then we keep a record and have to update the inventory. Every one of these that gets built replaces a legacy system for me. Directionally, we're heading more Bitcoin. Like you say, the dollar's dead. Directionally, we're heading more Bitcoin. But as we head there, a lot of businesses are going to have to deal with both currencies. Yeah. It's just what it is. And so every one of these gets built before the legacy companies add Bitcoin. I think they replace them.
Agreed. And with Zaprite, you can do the ticketing thing now. We're doing it for our event with PubKey in Nashville.
You issue tickets direct from it?
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
Huh. I didn't know that.
I could be wrong. Sorry if I'm wrong.
But I can do my donations in there as well. Like, my fund does donations. My football club does. We can do the donations in there. If they've got ticketing, great. I need an EPOS system. If they plug an EPOS, they could build the one-stop shop.
Yeah.
For processing payments. If I could, if I can plug inventory into there, that's going to be amazing.
Yeah. And it's an incredible niche and much needed part of the market where, again, the direction that John and the position that John took from the onset is like, let's just be wallet agnostic. Like, people need to accept Bitcoin and then add as many wallets as possible. Like that, I feel like for the longest time, it was let's create our own wallet and make it the best wallet, the best experience possible. And for different people, different wallets are better for their particular use cases or their particular user experience preference. And I think the idea of like, all right, let's be agnostic towards individuals' preferences and just create a one-stop shop where they can plug and play is genius. And I think they're going to be very successful. And I think the team that they've built is going to allow them to really get creative with what they can bring to market.
It's just an incredibly well-designed product. It feels, a lot of Bitcoin products feel like Bitcoin products.
It was built by a designer.
Yeah.
Right? So that's another thing that white pill, it's good to see more good designers getting into Bitcoin as well. That's, I think, one of the biggest hurdles too, is creating UX and UI design best practices to make it as easy as possible. And again, go back to Mutiny, like their Fediment integration where you can receive Bitcoin over the Lightning Network, but if it's a small amount, it goes directly into a Fediment if you have it set up within the app. That eliminates a lot of headaches where you don't even have to think about liquidity, channel management, anything like that. It just works. And that's what we need more of in Bitcoin is these applications that just work.
I'm definitely white-pilled. You can't even say it without smiling.
Yeah. We're going to win. We're going to win. It's no doubt things are chaotic out there. It's crazy, freaks. It's easy to get down in the dumps. That's what they want. They want you fearful. They want you poor. Hungry. They want you desolate. They want you in a state of despair so that you think you cannot get out of this dreary existence that we live in. It's not the case. We can do it. We can build our way. People are building the way out. And you got to believe that we can win. I think we have the talent, the drive, the will, and the truth behind us, most importantly. And it's just, I've been trying to do it more consciously. I'm not perfect, but don't focus on the negativity in the world. Focus on the positive things that are going to enable us to get on the other side.
Well, I'm white-pilled.
Yeah.
I'm in. I'm going to be using the meme. And also just consciously making that effort to be more positive, focus on the good, do good things.
Because just like the negativity is a negative feedback loop, the positivity can be a positive feedback loop.
I definitely think Bitcoin can help with that in that, what's his name? George Mikhail?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know he's got a book coming out?
Yes.
So I wrote the foreword to it. And my focus on the foreword was, you probably won't mind me saying this, I basically said I've not been the best dad in the world in that I've focused on career and traveled a lot because that's what my dad did, and constantly fighting to build a career to create that breathing space. The great thing about Bitcoin is that every 4 years you get that little bit of boost and get more breathing space. I'm buying, what I feel like I'm doing is where we've stolen time, the boomers have stolen time from us and our grandkids and our kids by borrowing from the future. I think the Bitcoin is allowing us to buy back that time in the future. Mm-hmm. Like I'm buying my kids time in the future so they don't have to work so hard, so they can, for their kids, be around a bit more and not work so much. So I feel like the fiat system is just is squeezing our time. It's like, American Auto always says it's like Bitcoin is a proxy for, money is a proxy for time. And as the inflation continues, we're having our time taken away from us because and not in just you having to work harder, but the time you do have, it can be more stressful, so you're not enjoying it. Mm. That gap between your income and your outgoings is getting squeezed. We've squeezed the middle class to breaking point. And I've often felt like Bitcoin is like a middle out. It's not a bottom up. It's a middle out to me. It's that you rebuild the middle class, and with that, it's you're going to be giving more time back to people, and that's what makes me optimistic. I'm really, really pro getting, like with my son. I said to you about my son. He's bought himself time in the future by getting into Bitcoin early. My daughter, I've been saving money for her since she was a kid. I'm just going to stick all in Bitcoin now. Buying time in the forward.
Yeah. No, this is something I think about a lot with two young children. My oldest started playing sports recently in like the last 6 months, 9 months.
What's he playing?
He's playing soccer and baseball. He will be playing lacrosse soon. But no, I was thinking like as he's starting his journey to play sports, and that's one thing I was very fortunate to have a dad that was really a good dad, showed up to all the games, like would pick us up from practice. And now my oldest is starting. That's a goal of mine is when he's in middle school, high school, like I want to be that dad that's at every game. And so like working as hard as possible now to make sure that I have the comfort and the ability to do that is something that I think about.
All right, man. Well, listen, you've white-pilled me and stealing it.
We're going to win.
I'm going to meme it everywhere.
Be nice.
Appreciate you, Marty.
Focus on the positives. I appreciate you, Peter.
Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Okay.